Hi, everybody. I'm Candid Frank Stanisci. That's Gary Groob, and we have Bob Taring and Don Zimmerman. Our technological challenge has been defeated. We've got him by telephone. Our technology is all set. He's right here. If you want to see what he looks like, that's what he looks like right now. I'm sure he's better looking than a telephone, but this is the best we can do for today. Gentlemen, welcome to the program. Bob, really appreciate seeing you every time.
Thank you, sir.
And Don, I don't see you, but I hear a lot about you, and I'm looking forward to hear from you.
I am too. Sorry about the technical difficulty, but at least we're able to talk.
Absolutely. That's all that really matters, really, is getting the information out there that we're looking for. And I can't pick two guys that understand the historical relevance of lacrosse and its roots. And by that, you have a good sense of where we need to go because you know a lot of the history. So, Bob, I'll start with you. You've been here before. I'll run you through the grill. How did you get involved in lacrosse?
Zim and I went to the same prep school, and I was handed my first lacrosse stick in the 4th grade, and we almost carried it to class. And I grew up in it, played it all through high school and some in college, and I started my coaching career in 1969. And just became a student of the game, and this is the first year I haven't coached in 55 years. So and it's been a thrill.
How about you, Don? What's your history in lacrosse?
Well, I got my first stick. I still remember the day. I got my first stick. I was 7 years old. I grew up in a little village just inside the city limits of Baltimore called Mount Washington. And you may recognize that name because for years, the premier college lacrosse club was the Mount Washington Wolfpack. So I was very familiar with it, and I got my first stick. And like Bob, I went to St. Paul's. I started playing in 3rd grade, and from there, just that's where I really learned the game. And I remember Bob. I was, when you're at St. Paul's, it was kindergarten through senior year. So I remember Bob as a player, one of the guys I looked up to, and just, had a great coach in George Mitchell, and was fortunate. We won 3 NSA titles, 69, 70, and 71. And then I went on to play first at Randolph-Macon. Then I took a year and a half stint at Catonsville Community College, and instead of playing JUCO ball, I played for the Carling Lacrosse Club. And again, this is back in the club days when there was no professional lacrosse, and this was the height of post-college lacrosse. And it was just, and then from there I went to Johns Hopkins and played, and I wanted to coach. I actually, when I was at Catonsville Community College going to class, I was asked to coach at a local high school, Cardinal Gibbons High School, and that's where I first started coaching. So I coached the JV one year, the varsity the next, and then I went on to play at Hopkins. After playing, I stayed and worked at Hopkins, and I actually worked for the grounds crew from 7 to 4, and then they let me off 15 minutes early. I ran up to the gym and changed my clothes, and I helped coach at Hopkins. And that just led to really a 45-year career in coaching.
That's truly amazing. Truly amazing. A quick question. I know you can't see me, so if I were to play a practical joke on you, and it went like this. So you've been around so long, what did they make lacrosse sticks out of before they made them out of wood?
That's a question for me. I'm the oldest here. Zim played with plastic. I played with wood.
Well, then, Bob, you can answer the question then.
Yeah, they made them out of twigs. They made the Native Americans. The host showed he made them out of twigs they found on the ground.
Absolutely.
But when I played with wood, I think Zim started with wood, but by the time he got into his senior year, Zim, everybody was going plastic.
I actually played with wood through my senior year at St. Paul's.
Yeah.
And I got my first STX stick, and I used that my freshman year at Randolph-Macon.
Now, a serious question, Don. This is a serious question. So, what was it about lacrosse that kept you in specifically, not just to become what you are now, but to play the game? What kept you in? What was the big draw to be a lacrosse player?
Well, number one, again, growing up in Mount Washington, I could walk down to Norris Field and watch them play. I watched, my mom worked at Hopkins, so I would go over and watch them play on weekends. But, I think what really drew me in was the stick, the wooden stick. And you just couldn't pull it off the shelf and go in and play with it. You had to get it, and then you had to work it. You had to soak the sidewall, which was gut. You put the popsicle sticks in there to get it straight. Maybe pull it on a little bit to get a little higher, and then the stop was again gut, and you could soak that and kind of make it into a little reverse C, so it would sit in there, and they weren't perfectly balanced, so you had to play with it and work with it, and really get to understand that stick, and it became very, very personal, and so and then just when you had it perfect, crack it, and then you had to get
You crack it, yeah.
the fiberglass tape and the resin and all that kind of stuff to try to bring it back to life. So it was the stick, and then of course just playing the game. It's the greatest game going, and
Absolutely.
early on, once I was playing at the Towson YMCA, and that's where I first started playing before I went to St. Paul's, and again, I'm 7 years old, and they put me on attack. I had a pretty good stick work back then. And all of a sudden, we lose the ball, and the other team gets the ball running down the field. And I'm chasing it, I'm an attackman, and I just go right over the midfield line, chasing the ball. And the coach blew the whistle and said, no, you're an attackman. You got to stay on this half of the field. I said, well, I don't want to play attack anymore. I didn't like standing there watching, the action from the other half of the field. But I always loved lacrosse. It was something that grabbed me and never let go.
You spoke to the investment that you make, a personal investment with the stick, the relationship that you develop with the stick, so much so that you would do everything you could to resurrect it and save it because of all that investment. I know this as well. Not only did you make a lot of an investment in the stick, and other players did of your era and do today, because the pocket is the pocket. But I think the return is the part that always Gary and I learn from talking to all of you, where you feel you have an obligation to give back, when it comes to lacrosse. I'll ask you that, and then Gary will take over. So what's the important thing in your mind, the first and most important thing that brings you here with us today, and the thing you carry in your back pocket that you always want to pull out, that comment, that thought, that belief, when you drop in to places like us who are looking for your experience?
Well, I know what lacrosse did for me. I mean, it just gave me joy. And I'm a very competitive person, and I like to win. So you had to have your stick ready. I tell my kids, and I tell people, lacrosse is a great game, and we all want to do our best, and we want to be successful. But to me, the beauty of lacrosse was that I was able to learn life lessons through the game that I carried with me as a coach, and I tried to teach my players the same thing, how to win, how to lose, how to be graceful and humble, and just be a teammate, discipline. Lacrosse has done everything for me. And so, to me, my job is to honor the game and to get back to the game by helping produce solid, athletes, citizens that when they go out and play the game, have the same respect and love
carry the banner that you picked up and feel so important to carry?
Well, I'm going to insert something about Don. He's being a little modest. Don, as an assistant and head coach, has 5 NCAA championships. And Don is in every Hall of Fame that lacrosse has. The U.S. Lacrosse, the Greater Baltimore, St. Paul's School, Johns Hopkins, UMBC, and the IMLCA, which is the coaching. We can't get a better one. He's in every Hall of Fame.
That's incredible.
And again, and I thank you for that. But what I tell people is that when you go and accept the Hall of Fame award, it's just an opportunity to thank people for helping you get there. And that's what it's all about. It's all about, it's a great team sport, and just all the people that have supported me over my career, my family, former coaches, players, parents of players. That's what it's all about. It's all about the people, and what a wonderful way to learn those life lessons. Play the great game of lacrosse.
Well, it's also a very, the underlying issue always in the foundation of this game is it's spiritual. As we know, the history of this game goes back to the creator, and from there it comes to the rest of us here, which is awesome, and your part in it is really important. Bob, go ahead, carry on.
No, Gary, you said you had a question.
I did. Don, you played in one of the great eras. What did lacrosse culture look like in the mid-'70s as opposed to what it is today?
Well, I think it was a much more intimate sport. The real growth hasn't occurred yet. And again, give credit to the modern sticks for the rapid growth of lacrosse. Nowadays kids can walk into a store and just pick one off, pick a stick off the wall, and punch in the pocket a couple times, and you're ready to go. I just think that just repeat that question one more time, because I kind of got sidetracked.
Well, the lacrosse culture in the 70s as opposed to what it is today, how much different is it?
Well, again, much more intimate. Not everybody played, and when you walked around and you were carrying a lacrosse stick, even in Baltimore, sometimes people would say, "What was that?" Not so much, because Baltimore I do consider one of the hubs of the game. But for instance, I have been and continue to be associated with the game of lacrosse and the growth of lacrosse in Japan. And first went over in 1987, and there you saw, and there was just a small group of college players that had discovered the game, Keio University, and they as the Japanese do, they researched, they went out, and they found a way to get the equipment, they got videos, and but when we would go to visit, do clinics in Japan, particularly in Tokyo, you took the subway everywhere, and all of a sudden, you're carrying a lacrosse stick and some equipment, and people are looking at you like, "What's that? What is that you're carrying?" And and that was a very intimate situation. So I think the intimacy, just not as many players out there playing the game, and it just seemed also a little bit more innocent, if that makes sense. It was just kind of almost a little culture that you had. You're playing lacrosse, not everybody did it. It's a cool game, and I think that's the difference.
Right. When you took over at Hopkins, how did your coaching philosophy evolve from when you first took over to when you started really excelling in there?
Well, I'd go back to St. Paul's and George Mitchell,
right.
the coach at St. Paul's. George Mitchell, he was a great player, great coach, and played at St. Paul's, played at Hopkins, was part of a team that didn't lose a game during those 8 years. And I just liked his philosophy and his style. He was laid back. He let you play a lot. He taught you the fundamentals, but he let you play a lot. he was a twice around the goal guy. 5 minutes of warming up and let's play. And then I played for Henry Ciccarone at Hopkins, and he was just very, very competitive. He was a stickler for the fundamentals. Reach discipline, but at the same time, he would run through a wall for the guy. So I think he was obviously more a different guy and a different style. And then in between, I went down and was an assistant coach with Willie Scruggs in North Carolina, and he was and still is to this day one of the most organized people I know. And he was kind of a combination of stickler, staying on you, but very, very soft-spoken. He didn't say a lot, but when he did, you certainly paid attention. And all great coaches, all great leaders, all teachers of the game.
Right. Kevin Forster is with us. He officiated many of you guys' games, both of you.
Oh, yeah. Kevin was a fixture. You didn't argue with him on the sidelines, right, Zim?
Well, I got to tell you, now I'm more, not more on, but I'm also involved with the rules and the officials. But I always believe that you need to treat officials with respect. Again, you got to be a role model to your team. You're sitting there coaching a game, and you got 35 guys behind you on the sidelines. You got guys on the field. And I just felt like, I didn't want to be a guy who was yelling at the refs. I wanted to respect them. But I was told later on that, by some very good officials that, they would appreciate that. And then if an older official was, officiating on a crew with a younger official when they were having their pregame meeting, one official told me, he said, listen, if Jim says something to you, listen to what he has to say because he's probably right. So, again, I think if you're always sitting there yelling at the officials, after a while they tune you out, and you don't want that to happen. But I also think that, look, I think everyone needs to respect one another, and certainly a coach and official can have a good relationship. And I feel that's the way I went about doing things.
Right. Over the years, what would you say is the biggest change in lacrosse since your playing days? You've seen some of the greatest players come on through between the Gates, Jeff Teat, a number of players. CJ Kirst now comes to mind. But through all the years, what do you think the biggest change is, how the game's evolved?
Well, again, I go back to the sticks. In the 1984 championship game where, we were fortunate to beat a very good Syracuse team, 13-10. If you look at the stats from that game, Hopkins had 72 ground balls, and I think Syracuse had 68. And you don't see that today. And I think the difference is because if you watch that film, the ball's always on the ground. You couldn't run through 3 or 4 guys because the ball was going to come out. And to me, that really made the game more exciting because, the situations could change in an instant. One team could have the ball and be going to the one end to score a goal, and all of a sudden a check takes place, the ball pops out, now the other team picks it up, makes a pass, and now it's a fast break going the other way. So I think the fact that the ball was on the ground more was a big, big difference. As far as the players, I think today's players are bigger, stronger, faster.
Right.
When I played, weights were considered a taboo. And I bet you Bob would testify to that. It was like, you don't want to lift weights, you'll get too tight. And of course we bought into that because who wanted to be in the weight room? But then all of a sudden, and I go back to when Maryland started to really dominate in those mid-70s, early mid-70s. They were the first team that I know that really put a lot of time into weights. And then when I went to North Carolina, again, another Division I big-time athletic school, we were fortunate to be able to use the football weight room. And Coach Groob had us in that weight room, on on it religiously, and we, I could see the benefits. So when I came back to Hopkins, when I played at Hopkins in the 75, 76, our weight room was a universal gym, and just not a varsity weight room, just an exercise room, and half the things were broken. And so, when I got the job from Bob Scott, I said, Scotty, we need a weight room. And he hemmed and hawed a little bit. We don't need weights. I said, Bob, we need weights. And so, Hopkins made the investment. We got a weight room, and it wasn't like a big deluxe weight room, but it was a good weight room, had the free weights, had some machines, hired a strength coach, and it certainly helped. So, again, I think just the athletes are better conditioned, bigger, stronger, faster, and there are more of them, too. There are more of them out there, and that's why I think you see, now, there are a lot of teams out there that have a chance to win the national title. Back when I was at Hopkins, there were maybe 5-6 teams that really had a legitimate shot. Now that number has at least doubled.
Oh,
Right.
yeah. Oh, yeah.
You both have coached in powerhouse schools and non-powerhouse schools. One of the things, Don, that you are known for is rebuilding programs of non-powerhouse schools. What were some of the challenges to make these guys contenders?
Well, first off, I went from Hopkins to Loyola. Hopkins, obviously, lacrosse #1 sport.
Right.
Loyola was right up there, the same. And UMBC, lacrosse was a priority sport, but I thought that, we needed a little bit more support as far as budget. And I also, felt like, if we're going to be successful, the first thing you have to do is recruit good players from good families to come and play for your program. And so, I can remember my first couple of years at UMBC. I tried to load up the schedule. I felt if we were going to get good recruits, you have to give them a good schedule. Good players want to play against other good players. So, I beefed up the schedule, and we took it on the chin there for a couple of years. But we started to get the recruits, and then, once you get the players and you teach them what you feel they need to learn, we started to gain some success. So, I didn't have the budget that other schools had, but, we were able to, again, recruit good players. I thought we had a lot to offer, an excellent education and, a school in Baltimore. We got some key players from the key high school programs, and we started to win some ball games.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, when you transitioned from coaching to media and broadcasting, really what surprised you the most about the television coverage?
Well, I can tell you this. I was more nervous before a game when I was broadcasting than I was coaching.
Right.
To be in that booth and to have the director and the producer in your ear saying, okay, 10 seconds until you're on the air. Have a good game. It was like, oh boy, here we go. And you do, but they're so similar. Coaching is all about preparation. Prepare your team, coach them, prep them up, get them ready. And then on game day, you got to be on top of your game. And that's the same thing with the broadcasting. I was an analyst, and when I was assigned a game, you asked my wife Dorothy, I just locked my office door and just watched films all week and studied the teams I was going to be covering. I was well prepared, but again, when you went on the air, it was a whole different ball game.
Right. Do you have some input in how they shoot the game? Because over the years, of course, with technology, it's much easier to watch and much easier to explain to other people because it's got a much more rounded viewing of it, with you guys also being able to explain it with what we're seeing.
Yeah, one of the things that I love about being able to be on a broadcast, whether it be television or on the internet, is I'm a teacher, and I've always believed. Some coaches are salesmen, and others are teachers, and I'm a teacher. I love to teach the game, And so to me, if you're on a broadcast, you have an opportunity to really teach the game to a lot of people, and I really enjoy that. I love the game, and I want the game to spread, but I think that there's so much. It's an intricate game, and the rules can change, and I think a lot of people are fascinated by the rules, and some are confused. And so, to be able to teach the game, teach the young players, hey, this is what you should do, and focus on this and that. To me, I really love that. One of the things I'm doing now is I'm working with the NCAA, developing a weekly in-season training video for officials and coaches as well. And what that allows me to do is watch a ton of games, and I break down games, and then I send my notes to my partner, Jay Fitzwater, out in Indianapolis, and he pulls them, and we create a library of plays, and they're under categories, personal fouls, technical fouls, crease, face-offs, whatever. And so every Monday, I get on the phone with the National Coordinator of Officials, Tom Abbott, and Willie Scribes, my former mentor. He is the Secretary Rules Editor, and we come up with, hey, this week, let's focus on, the contact in the head neck area. And we'll say, okay, and then I just go back to the clips, write the script, and pull the clips that I think should be in the video, and I send it to Jay, and he makes it beautiful. And so we did that for 14 weeks this year. Once a week, we put out an in-season training video. And, I just think it's a great way to not only teach the game, but also bring the officials and the coaches together so they're on the same page.
Absolutely. Now, earlier in the program, you mentioned going out to Japan and helping to build that program. I got to tell you, when I was at the Worlds in 2023, the team that most impressed me there was the Japanese team. Mostly homegrown, but fast. Their technical abilities were second to none. And I really thought they were in the wrong grouping. I thought they should have been up in the group with Canada and the U.S. They just had that much skill. Talk to me about building that program and getting it to where it is today.
Well, so the history of my association and Johns Hopkins Association with Japan and lacrosse, which, by the way, is celebrating their 50th anniversary. So there was a Hopkins alum, Norio Endo, who worked for Grumman in Tokyo. And he was in one of the hotels, and he saw a placard outside one of the conference rooms, and it said, Johns Hopkins Alumni Association, and they were there to present an award of some kind. And there was our vice president, Ross Jones. So Nori kind of just walked into the event and found Ross. He knew Ross and said, Ross, they're playing lacrosse in Japan. And Ross said, really? And so sent videos showing the kids doing line drills. And back then, again, this is at like 85 or 86. I mean, the Japanese students from Keio University, just one school, they sent a video, and they were doing line drills, weaves and everything, and they had good stick work. Yep. But they just didn't know the intricacies of the game. So Bob Scott went over first. He went over for 10 days and worked with the Japanese, and, Scotty was a great ambassador. Mm-hmm. And so Scotty came back and said, hey, we got to continue this. So then I went over next and worked with just the KO. And they had the gear, and, we started from the ground level, how we stretched, stick work drills we did, we coached them up, and you could say, that's the Japanese. They grab onto something, and they take that and try to make it better, and they were just so dedicated. And, it was a small group, but the passion, and that's what I love about the Japanese people, their passion. And so this group had such passion, and they wanted to just absorb everything they could while I was over there. They worked hard. Real quick, I stayed, I think the second time I went over with the late Jim D'Arcangelo. We went over one winter, and we did a clinic. And this is when a bunch of schools were playing now. And so I was staying in one of the players' homes, and practice was at 9 o'clock. And he told me, Coach Zim, we're going to get up at 6 o'clock, and we'll have a little breakfast, and then we're going to leave around, 6:30, 6:45 to get to the field. And I'm thinking, man, the field must be a long ways away. And so we have breakfast, we get in the car, actually, we drive, and we're like, a half an hour from the field. So then it's like 7:15, and I'm thinking, wow, geez, we're here a little early, So I said, Bunji, he was my host, you think maybe we could sleep in a little bit later because we got plenty of time? He looked at me and said, no, coach, because he was put in charge of me. And if anything happened where I wasn't on at that field on time, he was going to hear about it.
Right.
So he was making sure that we were there in plenty of time. So I kind of understood that after all. But then more teams started to play, and so when we went back and there were maybe 3 or 4 teams who were playing, one thing I noticed is that every team stretched the exact way that KO stretched. And KO stretched like Hopkins stretched. So, I realized that, hey, they like what we're showing and teaching them, and it's catching on. So, anyhow, then we took the whole team back and played in the first international friendship games. Hopkins played Team Australia, and the Tokyo All-Stars played St. Paul School. But since then, I went back with 4 players and went back with a team. I took Quinn Kesnick one time because they wanted more teaching of the goalkeeper position. And even at UMBC, I think I took 3 or 4 teams to Tokyo over a 14 or 16 year span. So we had some kids come over. We had a camp at Hopkins. We had a camp at UMBC. To this day, I'm very, very close to the Japanese. It's really one of the joys I have as far as being able to continue to be in the game and also work with the Japanese. They're lovely people and very dedicated, very disciplined, and very respectful and appreciative.
Right. Now, Bob, we've talked about this before. None of us thought in our lifetimes we'd see lacrosse into the Olympics again. And it's coming. It's less than 2 years away. And talk to me about sixes. And I want to get your perspective, and I want to get Don's perspective right after.
Well, matter of fact, Don and I had a little conversation on the phone about this, and I think you remember when I had Roy Simmons and Oren Lyons on, that Roy had a very strong opinion about the whole thing, and I do too, kind of. Zim and I are traditionalists. I was kind of involved by listening in the beginning of this at USA Lacrosse, and I tried to get when I was head of the foundation, I had a committee in LA for the '84 Olympics, and they sold the board of directors. I was out there 3 or 4 times. They convinced us that they could get an exhibition in front of the Olympic Committee in '84. Well, as it turned out, the week of the event, we had countries flying in. USA, Canada, Australia, and England, they changed the venue on us at the last minute and put us out in the field in the middle of nowhere. Well, needless to say, Richie Moran, Tommy Hayes, and I caught unbelievable crap for that. I mean, the editorials about us were not much fun, but it was an attempt, and we were allowed to use the Olympic name, but we were not an affiliated. And that's the first time since the 30s that attempt had been made. Now, fast forward to now. They got it in with the Olympic Committee. Yeah, the Olympic Committee. Nobody on that committee knows anything about lacrosse. They're more into soccer and other sports, wrestling and things like that. So the sale was tough, but evidently it got done. But the criteria that they gave, and if you know more, Zim, you tell me, was that we need a high-scoring, fast, entertaining game. Well, if you play international rules, you'll go to sleep because there's no stall. It would never have worked with international rules. And they wanted a shorter field, so they put it. So basically, sixes is box lacrosse outside.
Right.
All right, with a shortened field. A lot of the rules are going to be different. They've been Andy Shea and I have talked about it. He's the head coach of the sixes. They have changed the rules a little bit. There's no defense basically. You have all offensive players. You score, the goalie picks it up, and you go in the other direction. So you do sub, but you hardly have time to set up and play defense. If it goes out of bounds, it goes to the goalie, and he goes the other way. So it's not the closest guy. It's very fast. I've talked to a lot of the players that have been playing it and practicing. It's a 20, 21, 22-goal game. By the fourth quarter, these guys are bored. They're doing nothing but scoring.
Right.
And so they come off, it's exciting. They know they're going to the Olympics. But, Zim, I want to hear your input too. But it's not our game. In the 30s, they have film strips of Hopkins that played. The guy named Turnbull was a superstar. And they're showing the stands with 100,000 people. Well, that's the film they show. The honesty of it is track and field was going on at the same time.
Right.
And so what you're seeing is a lacrosse game going on, with Owens and the rest of them running world famous people. Right. And that's what it stands it for. So it's an intro. I'm surprised we got it. It'll help. I think it'll help grow the game. The good side is that many of the countries, the 60-some countries playing now, be easier for them to play the game because they can get 7, 8, 9, 10 players on a field where it'd be very hard to get 25 or 30 to play. So the entry level into the game on sixes, I think it'll help. There's no question, especially other countries. But from a traditional standpoint, I'm not for it. No.
Right.
Jim, I want to hear your input.
Well, I think my thoughts. I think I would just be repeating what you said. Real quick, when you talked about that game played on the infield of a track meet in front of 100,000 people, reminds me when back in the club days when I played for Carling, we would have a game on Saturday morning on Preakness Day.
Oh yeah, I played there. Yeah, I played there too for a couple of years.
And as the game wore on, we started early. So as the game wore on, though, the people started lining up around the field, and I'm thinking, man, these people must love lacrosse. Well, that field was covered with blankets and coolers as fast as you could think. They just wanted the field space that we were playing to get their seats. But anyhow, yeah, look, I'm a traditional guy. I love college lacrosse. I like high school lacrosse. I like defense. I like to watch good defense. But I can understand why the sixes is the way you got to go. It gives lacrosse a chance to be shown and promoted. But again, it's like box lacrosse. It's all offense. It's almost like a little bit of pickup hoops. You
Yeah.
The other way, you get the ball the other way. And I'm a traditionalist. I like the 110-yard field. I like the long poles. I just like the field game.
Right. One of the things I worry about, especially with this, is if neither the PLL or the NLL has an exit strategy, then we just had a lovely thing for a week, and then we go right back to where we were. If they have an exit strategy, this really can, when you have 300 more countries watching, be the ground floor to something very, very big about to happen. Do you think that they have this taken care of? Bob, first from you.
We haven't been told what kind of coverage is going to be given. If you remember, some of the sports were played at 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning.
Yep.
and on television, and nobody stayed up to see it. So we do not know what the broadcast format's going to be yet. And if, hopefully these stations like ESPN and Sports Network, if they're in the middle of the night, like some of the hockey games were back in the 80s when we won it, they will tape it and show it during prime time. Mm-hmm. That's what we can hope for. I've done some work with ESPN, and so is Zim. They're going to go where the money is. Sure. That's what they've always done. I mean, they cut Zim and my brother out of broadcasting to have the Three Musketeers do it, and they're good. But I thought my brother and Zim and I did some for NFL, for the NLL, for the indoor, for the box. I thought they cut my brother and Zim out, and I thought they were two of the best on television. There was no question. I don't know if you agree with me, Zim, but I thought they did a great job. So we don't know what the format's going to be. So if all the games are 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning on the West Coast, it can't be because of, but they could be playing at 10, 11 o'clock at night with, the 3-4 hour difference. So it depends on how they present it. We don't know. We just don't know how it's going to get exposed. I mean, what's your thoughts, Zim?
You don't know. You have to wait and see and see how it is presented. But I will say this, no matter how it's presented, I like the fact that there are athletes from around the world now that will pick up a lacrosse stick.
Yep. Yeah, that's a good part.
And no matter what happens as far as TV or anything else, these players will walk away with a love of the game. And to me, that's a beautiful thing.
I have a qualifier in that. It's a constant thing that I'm going to keep mentioning this until after the Olympics. We have to be ready for the little, bubble of interest that's going to happen because of the Olympics, and be able to hit while the iron's hot. And because the people aren't going to come to lacrosse has to go to them. So once people are aware of it, I hope we have the infrastructure to bring them in and capture their interest as soon as it is present.
Well, that's, I think, the job of World Lacrosse Organization, the USA Lacrosse, and the Canadian Lacrosse Association. You guys just restructured up in Canada, I just understand. And Pierre Fillon, who's a friend, I know he's doing pretty good in Quebec, even though he's retired. It's going to be a PR campaign, no question about it. Right. And diplomats from the game, from countries, need to go back to their country and create clinics and teach and gather things together. I volunteer, and I know Zim's done it. Be happy to go to these countries and do clinics on the heels of the Olympics. I mean, absolutely.
Yeah, and it all has to happen before the Olympics and be ready for when the Olympics happen is my point. There's a great opportunity here to inspire, get the people who are inspired into the game. Just like when the story we hear all the time, we heard it today. I'm 7 years old. I saw a stick. I was amazed at the game. There was the stick. There was the game. I started to play. That's what I'm talking about. So when the interest sparks, we need to be there to capture those folks and be ready to bring them into the game and really let them know what it's like. The sticks are ready. The teaching's ready. Everything's going.
Well, I agree. And I don't know what Zim feels, but it comes down to, like anything, dollars and cents.
Absolutely.
And if we have people like Cy, who's got the, in NLL teams, who could buy a country, if people like that stepped up and presented clinics for the pro players or even coaches like Jim and myself, but that kind of people have to step up to finance it, because we can't do it on our own.
And my point,
what I've found is, at least going to the Rebeski tournament the last number of years that I've gone, is watching European lacrosse, even as box, the interest in it keeps increasing year in, year out, and the skill levels are increasing year in, year out. So you look at the Czech team, and they're quite good. You're looking at the Swiss team; they're getting better and better. You're looking at Finland. You're looking at Switzerland. You're looking at Denmark, and they're all getting better and better. So it's working slowly. I'm hoping with the Olympics that this is the big push, that this gets everybody starting to move in the same direction.
Yeah. Zim, what do you think?
Yeah, I agree with everything that's being said. I think it's a wonderful opportunity, and it's like going back. We're all kids at heart, and going back and first picking up that stick, it was like magic. And I think that's the way kids feel. They pick up that stick, they're doing something different, and they get to master the stick, and they find a lot of joy and satisfaction in the game. And then once they start playing the game, and the up and down, and the contact, and scoring goals, I just think it's right there to be taken.
I agree. And, I had a tour of a place called the Good Stick Company when I was in Raditon, just outside of Prague, and saving them all kinds of money from trying to get the sticks out of North America or out of Europe or out of China, to do it right there at home. The kids there are stringing sticks. The people there are building their own sticks, and you're putting sticks in hands from kids right on upward, and it builds the interest and the love. And you can watch these kids string sticks in 10 minutes now. It's amazing.
Yeah, well, unfortunately, that's dovetail on what I was saying. The manufacturers used to be in competition. I know when I was working the World Games, when we had the first one in '82, we had a major fight between Brian and STX, and I sat in on a couple of those meetings. I mean, it was bloody. The manufacturers and Under Armour, people like that, suppliers, Nike, they need to get involved because they'll benefit too.
Sure.
And sponsor something. We have now, and I think Zim will agree, for the first time, we have international heroes in the game of lacrosse.
Right.
We never had that before. We have international heroes that are playing the game. And unfortunately, most of them are pros. But take those people and make them ambassadors and send them out to do things, to clinics and stuff like that, So, and that's just my opinion.
Oh, I agree. Now, for both of you, your personal reflection, what surprised you most in the evolution of lacrosse over your lifetimes? Bob, I want to start with you.
Wow, I was hoping Zim would get started with that one. What has surprised me the most? I would say the growth of the athlete. I started coaching back in the late '60s, and the growth of the athlete over the years. The stick has certainly had a lot to do with it. That the development of plastic stick changed the game, put in a lot of people's hands that could never have played with a wooden one. But we're talking about. Well, look at the teams now. Notre Dame, star player, football, MVP playing lacrosse.
Yep.
And these kids are big, fast, and I'll tell you right now that the University of Virginia, I've been involved with their lacrosse team now for a number of years, and their team is the same size as the football team when I started Virginia in '64. They're the same size.
Right.
And they're better athletes. And you're watching body control that you only saw in basketball 10 years ago.
Right.
It's unbelievable. The stick work is unbelievable. And they're wearing less equipment. I know when I played, and I think was in play, we were equipment up and down the arms and shoulder pads and, knee pad, whatever. Now, the little tiny stuff, they take checks that are unbelievable, and the physical side, and they're all in the weight room. They're all bigger. There's nutritionists now involved with the game. It's a whole different athlete, they've stepped up a whole way. I don't know, Jim. How do you feel? I think that's the biggest change I've seen.
Well, I would agree with the athletes, but again, the athletes are playing because they found the sport and they fell in love with the sport. And I'll go to the modern day stick. You can pick up a stick and immediately get comfortable with it. And then what happens down to the next generation. So, those sticks don't go away. They're somewhere, and you pass them down to a son or a neighbor's child, whether it be a boy or a girl. And so I think that the stick has helped in the growth of the game. And I think the growth of the game is something that, we've all hoped would happen. And now it's here. I mean, you see the rosters on some of these teams that are, competing for the national championship, and they have players from all over the country.
Yeah.
There was one of the teams had a goalkeeper from Alabama. And so, 20 years ago, you would kind of laugh at that and say, nobody from Alabama that plays lacrosse. Well, now they are. And so that's what I have seen is just the growth. And I think that television actually has a big part of that. Last weekend, all I did was sit around and watch lacrosse. It's the greatest lacrosse weekend of the year. This weekend you got the quarterfinals, 2 games, on Saturday and 2 games on Sunday. So it's out there for kids to watch, I know that, as a kid, whether I'd be watching football or basketball or lacrosse, as soon as the game was over, I'm outside doing something, and so I just think the exposure is greater. There are more kids that are playing. Athletically, they're bigger, stronger, and faster. And I think there are a lot of good coaches out there who are coaching the game. The fact that you can go to clinics and the films that you can watch. YouTube. I watch a lot of stuff on YouTube, and there's a lot out there that the kids can watch and learn from. Yeah. So I just think lacrosse is in a good place right now, and I hope it continues to grow and develop. I think it's one of the greatest sports out there.
Right.
I agree. Just give you a little feel about that. Last national championship that Virginia won, the entire defense was all west of the Mississippi. That was the first ever. The entire and the goalie were west of the Mississippi. So, by the way, just a little short. I only coached against Zim one time, my entire career. He was in North Carolina, and a gentleman named Richie Meade, who was former Navy. I was his first assistant coach at the University of Baltimore. We were number 6 in the country. They came up, beat us at the field in University of Baltimore and knocked us out of the playoffs in 1982. I'll never forget it. Never forgive you.
Well, sorry about that, Bob.
That's okay. You'll get over it. You'll get over it. Oh my.
Now we talk lovingly about decades ago. 20, 30 years from now, what do you think people would be talking about in this particular era?
Wow. Zim, I'm going to push that one to you first.
Okay, they could say this was the era where it really took off. I think this, and especially if things go well at the Olympics. I think people could look back and say, boy, that was a time when it hit its big time growth spurt, and it really took off. And so that's how I would answer that question.
Right.
Yeah, I agree entirely that this is a transition of exposure. The key will be if we're invited back to the Olympics. They dropped baseball. So, if they don't like what they see, we're going to have to make a major fight. But I see this as a transition period of growth exponentially. We've gotten a lot more countries involved in the last 5 years than ever imagined. They're playing in South Africa. I get tapes all the time because I have that site that you're on, Gary. And I'm getting tapes of Zimbabwe kids playing against the side of a wall. That would never have been there 10 years ago. So if that attitude and the people involved continue the growth and the Olympics gives us that impetus, and I agree, Frank, that it needs to be, we need to take advantage of it. I see it growing like crazy. I think that's the whole point.
Right. Now, we all know that once lacrosse gets you in the blood, you'll never get rid of it. What keeps you guys so passionate this far into your careers that it's still mainstream number one, what you're talking about? Bob, first for you.
Okay. It's almost like an addiction. And I'm sure other people feel that way. Lacrosse, I've looked at it. If you're a football guy, you're a football guy for your school, your college. You're in basketball, you're your college. You're a lacrosse guy, and I traveled this entire country when I was head of the foundation with a little stick on my suitcase. You're in a fraternity everywhere in the game of lacrosse, and it's such a passion that once you get hooked on it, there really isn't another sport like it.
Yeah.
And once you get that passion, I've seen it in people, in my players, as they continue. A lot of players become coaches, and they mentor. That's where I sit with it. It's just it's a part of my life. Zim?
Yeah, same. It's in my DNA. I'm 73. I got started when I was 7, so it's been a long, wonderful ride. And I agree with Bob. It's a fraternity. It's a fraternity of people that are involved in the sport. And you could go someplace where you don't expect to meet anybody, and all of a sudden, there's a common ground. Hey, you play lacrosse? Yeah, I play lacrosse. Yeah, and it's an immediate link. It's just a fraternity that people just enjoy being a part of. And again, it's to me, lacrosse is a hybrid sport. It's got the best of football, the contact of basketball, the agility, the skiing, soccer, up and down, hockey. It's got it all. And but mastering that stick, getting that stick, and mastering the stick, there's something special about that.
Now, one of my favorite questions, really to end up with, is how do you want the game to remember you, Bob?
Wow. I was asked that when I got my Hall of Fame at University of Baltimore. Very similar question. I want to be remembered as a mentor. Certainly, I was not the great player that I wanted to be, but I've had major pride. I still have contact with so many of my players at all the schools where I coached. They call me. I get to find out whether they have getting married. Used to be. Now I'm hearing about grandchildren, which is scary. And I go to watch it. The biggest thrill I ever had was that I've had 4 former players send their kids to play for me. That is the highest compliment I could ever have.
Right.
And I still stay in contact with them. I go to Virginia and I'm on the sidelines. You can't be an official coach with the NCAA rules, but I'm on the sidelines. The kids talk to me because, I'm 80 years old, but they still understand that I have a history, and I love being mentors. And I'm talking to kids that went to UVA now and their future. So that's really the way I want to be remembered.
Don, how do you want the sport to remember you?
Same. I like to be remembered as a mentor and a coach, someone who was fair, tough but fair. I was fair, but I was tough with my players because I think that's all part of growth and development. After every fall and after spring, I would have one-on-ones with the guys. I love the one-on-one talks with the guys. Off the field, let's talk about anything. But one thing I say is that when I do leave this earth, they're not going to put my win-loss record on my gravestone. No, this is serious. It's not the wins and the losses, the losses. They kind of disappear after a while. To me, it's not about that. It's about who shows up at the funeral. And I had such great memories and great relationships with so many players. And a lot of times, I don't know if Bob experienced this, but there's some players that you maybe butted heads with during the 4 years that they were coaching with you or playing for you, and you know, they maybe leave, and you think, well, geez, I hope he had a good experience, and then all of a sudden, maybe a year later, 5 years later, even 10 years later, I get a letter in the mail from a guy who I thought maybe didn't have a good experience, and he said, "Hey, coach, I just want you to know, I finally understand what you were trying to promote and teach to me, and those are prized possessions." People ask me, "Hey, where are your championship rings?" I don't know. I do not know where my championship rings are, but I have a drawer of letters and note cards that I received from former players that, to me, that if I'm down, if I need a pickup, I don't go looking for my championship rings. I go looking for those letters and read a couple, and it reminds me, you know what, you got it right. You got it right, and so did the kid. And to me, that's what it's all about.
Same experience, Don. I've had the same. So it's very rewarding.
That's wonderful. I want to end it on that note, on such a great high as we are here. I really want to thank Bob, as always. I want to thank you so much for coming on yet again and talking lacrosse with us. And I always love and cherish your moments, even talking on the phone. I really enjoy every minute of it. Don, I really want to thank you for taking the time. Technologically or not, doesn't make a difference. We got the message out, and it was wonderful. Thank you so much for taking the time and talking lacrosse with us and going through your life with us.
Well, thank you for having me, Gary and Frank. And enjoyed meeting you, even though, again, it's just by audio. And Bob, thank you for approaching me at the St. Paul's Blue Jay weekend and asking me to do this. I've really enjoyed my time in our conversation. So thank you again.
Thank you, Zim. Appreciate it. Gary, Frank, thank you for having me again. I'll be back with some
Absolutely.
more interesting people.
Absolutely.
Well, all I can say is, as hard as I try, I keep touching the phone, I still have a blank expression on Don's face. Don, it's a real pleasure. Sorry. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Well, thank you.
You're welcome.
I was going to say, I don't know if I've ever had a blank expression.
There you go. Listen, it was a real pleasure meeting you by phone or otherwise. It was a pleasure to listen to the history that you had to share with us. But most of all, the thing that we always learn every week when we do this show for the many years that we've been doing it is the passion that lacrosse people and family have for the game. And thank you for your part in establishing that in my mind and reinforcing it.
Well, you're certainly welcome. And again, thank you. It's a great game, and great people are involved in it, and it's just special. So thank you again.
You're welcome. And of course, that a good segue to Bob Tarring. Ditto to you too, my friend. Thank you for being here, and thank you for helping us to get the better insights into the game and how important the history speaks to the future.
It's always a pleasure, gentlemen. I love being here.
So for Gary Groob and the guys, Bob Tarring and Don Zimmerman, I'm Candid Frank Stanisci. Thank you for watching. We'll see you again next Thursday. This has been an NLL Lacrosse, where all we do is talk lacrosse. Thanks for watching.